Hello everyone, this is Menz here. I'm going to be playing the SU-122-44 here on Westfield. Now, this Russian premium tank destroyer at tier 7, it doesn't have preferential matchmaking like a lot of other older premium tanks have, because this isn't exactly the newest, but I haven't exactly touched too much on this because I haven't picked it up until recently since it was on sale. Now, this is going to be a mastery badge first class match. I'm going to be doing a little bit under 3,000 damage, and I pretty much hit and penetrate every shot with this tank in this match. Now, something to keep in mind with this tank, essentially you have a very similar gun, to say like an IS-6 almost, as far as the penetration and damage. It's virtually the same, outside of some accuracy issues that both tanks have. Now, with this tank, at tier 7, 175 millimeters for your standard round. It's workable, against 7s, 8s, but once you start getting into the heavily armored tier 8s and a lot of 9s, 175 millimeters is going to be pretty hard to work with, the poor accuracy. But you do have a decent premium round, bumps it up to 217 millimeters, so carrying a bit of them is definitely in your best interest. You can kind of lean heavily on them at times, like I I tend to do it, but a 0.39 accuracy, it can be tough to work with that at times if you're facing a lot of higher tiers. Fortunately, this is a top tier match. Having a nearly 400 damage gun with a little over 3,000 damage per minute, just its base stat without brothers in arms and equipment and everything added on top of that, it can tear apart lower tiers, which this thing is pretty nasty to deal with. If you're even in a tier 8 and it can pen you, that amount of DPM can really wreck a tank. Now, it only has 840 HP. Being a TD, it doesn't have the highest amount of HP. Armor wise, it's decent with the angled front. However, you're not going to want to really rely upon that too well. Our S-51 died. Yeah, that wasn't a very good start to the match, but seeing, before we get too far here, basically approaching like this battle, I'm in a TD. It can't really hill fight very well, doesn't have a turret, and right now we see our 3 TDs heading up here. That's not exactly the best idea. Yes, a lot of times the fighting takes place here and it's important, but you're playing with 14 other strangers on your team and also against 15 random enemies. You never know what's going to happen, but going to a spot like these 3 tanks, I was tempted to help, but the enemies are going to have a fairly easy time pushing over here, most likely. So that's going to get me spotted quickly. I'm going to die, they're going to die, and we're going to lose. So instead of that, it's better, even if your plan initially wasn't to go where your best chance of survival is. And for me, that's more towards the center of the map. But oftentimes, sometimes you forget to do that, or you try to force things. It almost never works out in your favor. Now, all right, let's just tie this to the fix cam. There we go. But as far as moving around with this, in this map specifically, there's a lot of cover low down, like these little walls and stuff. So sometimes hitting shots that they don't look like you're able to hit them, it will work. Now I am spotted here. I didn't think I was, but luckily artillery missed me. But so far, not so good. We just killed a KV-2, but we're down 3 tanks, one being our SPG that killed itself. But so far I'm trying to find my way through here without really exposing myself. But fortunately I'm able to set up and get a couple shots over this way. It's like, fortunately there's a little bit of cover. Now when I pop out here, I'm capable of getting hit by those SPGs back in this area, but luckily for me, they did not take advantage of that mistake I made. They did pop our T1 heavy though, but fortunately for me, you know, I was kind of spared. Now this guy, I blind fire him. I have a pretty good idea where he's at, but at this point, I don't have high hopes for us. It's like we're down 4 tanks. They have, the hills with a T-29 and a T-20 on it. We're kind of stuck in the center here, and it's not the best situation for us. I load up an APCR and get that T-29, which was huge. That got him down to one-shottable levels and really helped us out. But now that I'm getting focused on, just run away. It's no point in me tucking in there. Your best chance is trying to run back to survive. Like, I do take damage there, but fortunately it wasn't that large of a hit. And they take out the AMX ELC I was concerned about. Now, looking at the T-20, he still has enough HP, and he's also, kind of focusing on myself and the KV-2 and 3. But with that shot getting him down, I know I can one-shot him, even with a standard round, which I do have APCR here because I would like to land this hit. I know I can kill him. So instead of sitting there and just letting him spot us and kill us as far as RD is concerned, it's better to push into him. Even if he had hit me there, I wouldn't have died from his shot. And, I was pretty confident in landing that shot on him, even with the accuracy. Fortunately, artillery misses. But now, considering, we're down to just a few tanks here, they still have a pretty good leg up on us. We've taken out all of their tanks, more or less. Like, there's some of these mediums, but they're all down in this part of the map, to where I can fight on the hills now because it's kind of an equal playing field. I still have to worry about these TDs and peeking over, but fortunately for me, that's gonna kind of fix itself here. One of these guys kind of makes a little bit of a mistake. It's like the Cromwell is on our cap here. I was really concerned about pushing over here. I'm trying to kind of back up and spot, and coincidentally I spot this little fellow here. He was probably looking to kill me, but fortunately for me, I backed up, trying to be safe, take him out here. I was trying just to get on top of here to kind of get a little peek. It's a little bit safer sometimes than to peek over, showing your lower plate and a little bit more of your tank. At this point, instead of pushing into 2 TDs, I was thinking I need to go back to the cap. However, we do spot this IKV, IKEA 103. Let's be honest, that's what most people call it. And I know this tank, it doesn't have the best gun to it. It's not accurate. If it has the heat gun, it can't pen me very well. But fortunately, artillery takes him out. Now, instead of worrying about the SU-122, our base is a little bit more of a concern, especially with those 2 guys popping up there. Rather than trying to push in, kill their arty, it's almost always better to return to your base. Luckily, the SU-122-44 is a fairly fast tank. I am going slightly downhill here, but the main strengths it has, pausing it again here, mobility, the firepower outside of a couple accuracy and penetration woes against higher tiers, but those are the strengths of this tank. It has a sprinkle of armor, and the main downside outside of the penetration and accuracy at times is view range. I'm extremely worried about actually being able to spot things. Luckily, I spot that TD and I can kind of run away and he misses me, but the view range on this thing, I put optics on this. Some people say that you want to put a camo net, even binoculars, but I move around a little bit too much in this to make use of that. And at this point, kind of shitting my pants because I'm like, crap. But fortunately, I'm able to kill him. That was one of the problems I was going to have having to push into him. You're pushing into a pre-aimed enemy. Never want to do that unless you're prepared for it, and in a tank like this, not really worth it. The way I was set up there, those mediums were shooting up at me, hitting my upper glacis and bouncing off. The armor, you can exploit it a little bit, depending on how you set up. And fortunately for me, they weren't able to kill me there. Alright, let's get back to the non-free cam here. But as far as this, is concerned. At this point, there's a Strev somewhere sitting back, and we've basically turned the tides into our favor here. I did a little over 2,000 damage so far, now almost 23, with 3 SPGs and 1 medium tank left. He kind of left his team out to dry, but at the same time, they did push a little bit too hard without knowing where we were at. But more or less playing this tank, being top tier like this, you can play it a little bit more aggressively because you can bounce a couple shots. Your gun, you can penetrate everything you come across, considering you have a bit of APCR. But when you're playing against a lot of 8s, definitely want to play a little bit further back, especially 9s too. You want to keep people close to the max V range. That's why I carry 4 HE, just so I can chuck it out at a couple tanks where APCR won't pen with the poor accuracy at range. But this tank does get very, gets very strong later on in matches, even in higher tiers, because you have an insane amount of DPM, you have pretty good alpha for a tier 7, you have good mobility, and the camouflage isn't bad on it either. When you shoot, of course, you're going to lose most of it and people can see you, but setting up even in higher tier matches, you can get a surprising amount of shots off, and penetrate with APCR a good amount of time. But this thing will shred apart mediums, lights, lightly armored TDs, the flanks of heavy tanks. But swapping over to APCR helps you with heavily armored tanks. But I ended up getting, I think, 2 more kills here. I killed both SPGs, I believe, getting, the whatever that medal is for destroying 3 SPGs. But, fortunately, in this match, I wasn't faced off against a lot of higher tiers. But, it is a fun tank to play if you like Russian TDs and have crews for them. I picked it up because I plan on getting Russian TDs soon. That's why I've kind of held off of it from getting it for so long, because I don't have them yet. But the crew setup on this is pretty good as far as matching your Russian TDs, and as far as performance wise, it's a pretty strong performer. It's just against higher tiers, you really have to play a little bit more cautious and really be aware of your V range being poor. Like, you're gonna have matches where you can't spot stuff if you're one of the last few in your area. You just get torn to shreds, but it's kind of what TDs are supposed to be. But anyway, end game screen here, mastery badge first class, got a Top Gun award, high caliber, whatever that SPG medal was. Second screen, most amount of damage on my team and in the match by all right amount. The KV2 did a very good job. Luckily, the 3 of us kind of stayed alive, which, if you remember back to the beginning of the match, us TDs, like, I was planning to fight, let me bring it back up here. I was planning to fight, over in the 1 to 3 line over here. I was going to support here because you can shoot from there without being spotted if your team sets up, kind of in between the enemy, fairly decent margin of error for you to set up an E1 and not be seen sometimes. But instead of me going there, I stuck with the KV tanks in the center. Wasn't where I wanted to go because me pushing in there definitely was a little bit risky, and it's hard to get shots off without a turret and pushing that close with low HP like that. But paid off. Sometimes you do things that you don't want to, but it definitely pays off more times than not, rather than going to a spot where you're more likely to die. And I like to say this a lot, you're fighting the tank that you're in more so than the enemy tank. That's something you want to try to avoid the most, and that's something that you will see help improve you a lot. And then as far as the end last screen here, I shoot 12 times, I hit 11 of them, I pen all of them. APCR helped me there. I fired, I think, 5 APCR out of 12 shots. So, it's a decent amount I fired, but overall, you're going to need a bit in this. But luckily for a premium tank, you're going to break even as long as you penetrate them all, even without a premium account. With a premium account, because it's higher alpha round, if you penetrate all your premium shells, you actually still turn out a little bit of a profit, I believe, every time you penetrate an APCR round. And then I only blocked 440 damage, and as far as assist damage goes, I didn't get much, just a little over 100 there. But this is a good tank. It's not the easiest to play against higher tiers, I won't lie to you. If I had preferential matchmaking, it would be pretty broken, because that's basically the only thing holding it back is having that gun against tier 9s. But it's virtually the same outside of a few little differences. But as far as penetration and alpha goes, it's very comparable to, say, like the IS-6. But the IS-6 actually has armor, has more HP, and this tank, you're trading that to be a tier lower. So it can be pretty fun, but also be a little bit of a hindrance. But anyway, thanks again for watching this replay here. Hopefully you enjoyed it. I do have a tank guide / review of the SU-122-44. Goes into a little bit more in-depth analysis of the tank over on Wackover.com. You can find a link to the website and the tank guide here at the end of the video. Otherwise, feel free to check out my live stream. I live stream here a few times a week here on YouTube. If you're a subscriber, you can get notifications for it. It sends you to your email whenever I live stream, and also for my regular videos. Otherwise, I do have my schedule, and right under the live stream in the video description, my schedule for the stream. Feel free to check it out. You can always request this tank if you'd like to see it played live. Otherwise, hopefully I'll see you in another video sometime soon. Hopefully you have a good day. See ya.